Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of a series I'm going to call Skills Plus Plus. That is a programming joke, and it'll make sense later. This is going to be aimed at absolute beginners, people that have no clue what they're doing but want to. So we're going to start off today by just talking about programming a little bit. What is a bit? What's a byte? How does binary work? And then we'll jump into coding our first program using C++, and we'll go the typical route of the Hello World program. But I will go through and explain everything step by step. So first off, what is programming? Well, programming is not magic. It's not something you sit down at a computer and wave a magic wand and make some stuff happen. Programming is actually very, very physical. If you can think of this penny I've got here. So we'll call heads on, tails off. That's all programming is. And that goes into what is a bit. A bit is a binary digit. It's a 0 or 1. And all that is it's like a light switch, on or off. A computer really handles everything that we see on a day-to-day basis on these machines using on or off, and which switch you're switching on or off, and that's pretty mind-boggling when we think about it. So everything in programming can also be boiled down to a single statement. Maybe we're going to move this from here to there. That's it. Every single statement that we write in a programming language can really be boiled down to that meaning. And again, a lot of this will make sense later on, but I feel it's important to cover these things, kind of plant that seed early on, because if you're learning how to program, it's really nice to have this upfront understanding that you're actually flipping switches inside the machine, on or off. And you're physically moving information around from different places in memory, from the hard drive to RAM to the processor, and physically doing things. You're physically affecting the hardware by the code that you write. That takes us into a compiler. So one of the first things you probably need to understand is, what is a compiler? So a compiler is a piece of software written by people much smarter than probably you or I that interprets the code that you write into something that the computer can actually understand, because we write code that the computer really doesn't understand, and that takes us into the different levels of languages. So the computer speaks binary. There are zeros and ones. Those are those switches, on and off. The next step above that is assembly language. Very few people in the world know how to write. I don't know how to write in assembly language. If you can find somebody who does, if you can learn it, those people make a lot of money, and they're very well thought of in the industry. The next step above that is what I call a basic programming language, and this is what we're going to be focusing on in my series. C++ falls into this category. The next step above that is scripting languages. These are things like JavaScript, ActionScript, C#. They're the next level up. They provide further abstraction from assembly language and binary. So it's kind of this tier of how far away from the machine are you. The compiler processes all those layers of translation so that the computer can understand what exactly you want to accomplish with the code that you're writing. So for the purposes of my series, I'm going to be using Microsoft Visual Studio 2010 as my compiler. Now, I realize not everybody can afford this software or know where to get it. I managed to get it free through educational means. If you don't have any means of obtaining that software, there's actually an excellent compiler called Bloodshed Dev C++, and I will leave a description to that, a link to that compiler in the description below this video, so that you can go ahead and download that and follow along. So we're going to jump right in and start writing our first program. So this is Microsoft Visual Studio 2010 Professional. Now, for those of you using the free Bloodshed, it should look fairly similar, and most of the things will be in the same place. Things will work roughly the same. But like I said, for the purposes of this series, I will be using Visual Studio. So the first thing we want to do is create a new project. And it's going to ask you what kind of project you want to make. We're going to start out by doing a lot of stuff as a Win32 console application. The reason for this is because it's very easy to see your progress, and it's also very easy to debug your applications as you're programming them. So we're just going to name this Hello World. Okay. And it's going to ask you a couple of questions. I never like the precompiled header. I believe that this kind of sucks. So we're always going to make an empty project. And we'll be doing this process a lot. Every time I do one of these videos, we're going to be creating a new project for the most part, unless we're doing something really, really big. So under your source files, you want to create a new item, and it's going to be a C++ file, a .cpp file extension. And we're going to name this Hello World. Okay, so now we've got a blank screen, and we can start programming. The very first thing we're going to do, and this is going to be the same in almost every program you write in C++, is we need to include. So use a hashtag include, and the first thing we always include is the IO stream. Now, what this is we're including a library of pre-written code. This is stuff that already exists in the compiler in C++. And all we're doing is saying, hey, we're going to be pulling some keywords and functions from this library that's already built. And IO stream stands for the input and output stream. So that allows us to access the keyboard and the monitor on a computer. So that allows us to get keyboard input and output it on the display. That's all that is. And down here, second line, using namespace standard, STD. So STD stands for standard. And that's just saying to the compiler, hey, this is a normal C++ program, and treat it as such. So the compiler is going to understand what language you're speaking when you're doing this. The next thing we're going to do is set up our main function. Okay, now, programming is really, they call it a programming language for a reason. There's vocabulary, there's syntax, there's grammar, there's punctuation. All of this is very important. So you notice up here, I ended using namespace standard with a semicolon. You want to end just about everything in programming with a semicolon. The semicolon is C++'s version of a period. It's the end of a thought. It's the end of a statement. When it comes to writing functions and variables and such, this int here, that stands for integer, and that is a data type. So basically this function that we're writing here has to return an integer. This is a whole number. We know this is a function because of these two parentheses right here after the name of the function. And you can change this to whatever you want. We can call it hello, we can call it goobers, whatever you'd like to call it. I usually call it main. It's a good practice to have a very consistent approach to naming things. Most people will name their main function main. So it's a good idea to get in the habit of doing that. Inside the parentheses, this is where you would put arguments for the function. That's not important right now. We'll get to that in another video. We're doing very, very simple stuff right now. And the curly brackets that you see here, these are enclosing the function. So this is what you want to have happen when this function runs. So the first thing we're going to do is cout. This stands for console output. And we're going to use some arrows, hello world. And don't forget your semicolon. Now, these arrows, an easy way to remember which way the arrows face is we're going to take whatever we wrote here and put it out this way to the console output. So the arrows always face in a logical direction to what you're doing. Now, the reason this is in quotes and highlighted a different color is a computer does not understand English. It doesn't understand a spoken language. We wrapped it in quotes saying, hey, this is a string. I want you to print it out exactly as it is. And, of course, our semicolon to finish that statement. Now, like I said before, this is an integer function, so it has to return something. So when we're done, when we're all done writing our function, we're going to do return 0. All this is going to do is exit the function and exit the program. Now, for the purposes of this, I hardly ever use system pause. But we're going to do it this time. So now, when we run this application, it compiles, and you can't see it. There we go. So it says, hello world, and press any key to continue. Pretty cool, right? Not so much. We'll put that down here next to my face. Alright, so when we press any key, it exits. So let's say we want to add some more functionality to this. We want to do something a little cooler. Because that's not really cool. And also, it kind of looks like crap. So let's add in some more arrows and put in end L. That stands for end line, which is basically going to simulate pressing the enter key on a keyboard in a word processor. So when we run this again, you'll notice now hello world is on its own line. Now that is pretty cool. At least I think so. Now, we are here to learn programming, so we want to add in some logic. Let's say, first off, we need to create a variable. We'll create an integer and call it num for number. So this differs from a function, and the compiler knows that because you did not include the parentheses. Those parentheses define a function. If you don't have them, it defines a variable. Now, we're going to ask for user input. So this is console in. And the arrows go the other way because we're going to put that input into number. Then, we're going to take that input and basically just have the program parrot it back to us. Very, very easy. So, let's step through this again, just to make sure everybody understands what's going on. Here we're creating a variable called num for number. We're using the console in, and we're taking that input and putting it in. Notice the arrows facing the other way, into the variable we just created, number. Then we're getting a number and outputting it to the console, which is the screen, creating a new line, and then ending our program. So let's see what happens when we run this. Blank screen. So let's put in a number, 5, and it outputs 5, and then tells us press any key to continue, where it will then exit. Let me get rid of this system pause now. Now, an end user might not understand what exactly to do, so we can actually put in some prompts here to let the user know what's going on. So say, please input a single digit. Actually, we'll just say please input a whole number. And for the sake of making things look nice, we'll put another end line in there. So now, when we run this again, we'll say, hey, please input a number. So we'll input 3. And it outputs 3. Now that's pretty cool. So now we've learned how to take advantage of input and output using C++. Next week, we're going to cover if statements. We're going to expound on the user input and basically do an overview of how a program is going to handle some basic logic. If you like this video, please leave a comment. If you have any questions, also leave a comment. I'll try to get back to everybody. And I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe so I can keep bringing you more of these videos. See you next time.